Morning, everybody. My Christmas vacation is almost over. I have to go back to work tomorrow, so the frequency of these videos is going to slow down. But yesterday I made a gate uh, to cover this track, which you see a lot in real life. Now, in real life, ITT Grinnell did not have a gate, but my Oak Hill layout, the Brickyard, does have a gate. So I thought I would prove the concept on this and put it there as a neat little detail. So I filmed it all yesterday in the garage. I had a little tripod pointing straight over my workpiece, and evidently I bumped it. So when I got done and with the gates, everything was completely finished, I went back to review the tape, and the view had shifted 90 degrees. So I can still use some of it, but I'm going to have to refilm a little bit of it, but the gates are already done. So I'll just have to talk about what I did there. So I apologize for that. I apologize for the poor quality when it shifts a little bit. But I still think you'll be able to understand what I did. So let's get started. All right, let's look at some of the materials we need to build the gate. I use Gold Metal Models chain link fence. Any chain link fence will do, and even if you build your own chain link fence, that would work fine. That's just what I like. I like Gold Metal Models fence. To cut the fence, I just use this pair of scissors. That's the easiest way to cut it. The pin vise with the drill bit is just to drill the hole to put the aluminum tubing down on the ground to mount it. I like the super glue gel from Gorilla Glue. Aluminum tubing is going to be the anchor in the layout. So it's just, you get it in a little 4-pack, pretty thin. You need to cut it with the razor knife, because you cut it with wire cutters, it pinches the end closed. So you need the razor saw or somewhere to, a hacksaw or somewhere to cut it. I use this polystyrene rod to add a brace onto the gate, like a diagonal brace. Now you could frame out the whole gate, because the Gold Metal Models doesn't have a bar across the bottom, and every gate's going to have a bar across the bottom. It's not that noticeable in N scale, so I didn't add one on, but you could frame out the whole gate with this thin polystyrene and then paint it. Probably look really good. The other thing I don't have a part number for is this steel rod. My dad built model airplanes, and I just inherited a bunch of this stuff after he passed away. All I can tell you is that it will slide inside the aluminum tube pretty snug. You don't want it to flop around, because if it does, the gate will sag. So when you go to the hobby shop and get the tube, just go over to the wire, which is probably 2 feet away, and find a piece of wire that will fit inside this tube pretty snugly. That's all the tools that I need. Had to hold this by hand. For some reason, every time I point my camera straight down, it flips the view. So I'm struggling with it a little bit. Hopefully you can see everything okay. So you want the steel rod to be able to slide. It's going to be the pivot for the gate, is the steel rod. So it needs to slide, but it needs to be tight enough where it doesn't let the gate sag. So if I pull it out, and I'm going to put some of the styrene in that I showed you. It says that it's 0.025 rod, and I know you can't see this, but it's actually too loose. So the steel rod needs to be a little bit bigger than that styrene. But again, I'm sorry, I can't tell you what size you need. You just have to go to the hobby shop and pick it out. But it usually comes in like a bundle, 3 or 4 pieces. It's not very expensive. I've spray painted this already, a rust color. I don't care if I get 100% coverage. Again, in real life, nothing is ever one color, almost. So if you see a chain link fence, it'll have some steel, metal that hasn't rusted yet and some rust. And so I'll probably, dry brush this or something, but I am modeling a sort of a rusty, older area. So for the gold medal models, basically I need an upright on each end of the gate. So I'm going to actually ruin 4 panels to make 2 gate pieces. Now you see this one up here I made, that's from the gate I already showed you. I could glue a piece of this rod on there and try to make it work, but you know, I've got this extra stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and utilize it. So I'll cut that out and I'll show you what it looks like. Just as an illustration, I wouldn't recommend getting your wife's sewing scissors or something, but you can cut this with scissors pretty easy, and that's the way I would do it. I ruined some X-Acto blades trying to cut through it. These scissors just will cut right through it. Here's the 2 pieces that we're going to use to build our gates. So notice I cut off the little tabs down at the bottom that Gold Medal Models includes to help mount it. On my layout, since I have foam, I just stick it right down the foam. They have a little mounting jig that they include with the it's actually along the top here. You can see the holes in it, and you can poke holes in your layout or drill holes if you need to, and then those tabs line up and go right down in there. But we don't need them for this case. One thing I do recommend is you're building a left gate and a right gate. So I try to keep the gates close together in this orientation, so I end up with, I don't want 2 lefts or 2 rights. I want them to match. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach my rod that's going to be the pivot on each side. Now I have 1-inch foam, and so I could stick this thing way down if I want to, but you just want to make sure it sticks down far enough to go into the tube, which is going to be sort of like the concrete anchor for this to pivot. So I'm going to leave it down about 1/4 inch. So I'm going to cut these pieces, and then I'll show you how I glue them on to the gates. Depending on how you cut the wire, you may need to clean up the top of it a little bit. It's not real visible. You know, these gates usually have like a round metal cap on them, and I'm not going to try to duplicate that. It's all just going to be painted the same color, but you know, you don't want a burr or anything sharp edge on it. So I take my 2 little pieces and I tape them down lightly with blue painter's tape. I want to make sure they're flat. So to the styrene, I put that styrene there so you could see. Actually, if I was using my grid underneath, it'd be a little bit easier because I want to make sure these are square. So at this point, I'm going to take some super glue, and I probably won't do this on camera. I'm just going to describe it. And I'm going to put it on a toothpick, and I'm going to lay a bead along here and along here, and then I'm going to position these right on top of that bead and let that dry. Okay, so this is the section I had to refilm. So after I glue this along here, the glue is dry, I sort of flip the gate over. I'm trying to hold the camera and do this. And then that's when I add my diagonal brace. So I take my plastic rod, I start at the upper, you know, because the braces I've seen always go from the top where the anchor is down to the bottom. So I just glue it up to the metal rod, let that set up, and then I glue it down at the bottom and I cut it off. And then at this point you can, you know, go ahead and paint it, obviously. And you could also add a lower bar at this time if you want to. So here are the 2 gates. At this point you should probably go ahead and paint. You can paint the styrene first, and I probably wouldn't paint the steel rod first. So when you get to this point, you can go ahead and paint them how you want them. So when I take my aluminum tubing, oh, that's the end that's cut wrong. I can take the gate and I can put it in this end, and you can see it's going to swivel. So the next step is to install the aluminum tubing where you want it on your layout. So I am not ready to do that yet. These gates are going to be for my brickyard at Oak Hill. I was looking through some photos of the 80s when the loading dock was still there, and noticed that they had a big chain link fence all the way around the place. It's gone now. It's gone from the loading dock anyhow. It's still there on the back part of the property, but that part is gone. So, but I am going to have to model that and model this gate. So, but I will show you on a scrap piece of foam that I have how to do it. So as you can see, I just taped down a piece of track. The part that says brickyard is the place where I don't want people at. So the brace should be on the inside. I want the gates to meet in the middle, centered over the track. So I just lay one gate down, whichever side it is, I mark it, and then I can take my little drill, my pin vise, and drill a hole and just push the aluminum rod or aluminum tube down in it. So let me move that one out of the way and see if I can do this. Okay, so zoom back a little bit and you can see that I've got the gate. Maybe it's off by a little bit, but it's pretty close to in the middle. And you can play with this aluminum tube. You can lean it back. You can push it down. Again, I'm in foam, so it's not as critical for me. If you're putting this in plywood, you better get it right the first time, probably. And of course, if you're putting it over a road, like a gate to go into a driveway or something, you can just push the tube down all the way, flush with the ground. So now we'll go back and we'll show you how it looks on my layout in front of ITT Grinnell. Okay, here's the first gate I made. Hope you can endure the shaky cam for a second, as Mike Pfeiffer calls it. You can see the aluminum tubing. I actually painted it concrete color to look like it was, just a concrete pedestal. And I just matched the fence back up to it. So I think it adds a lot to the scene. And I said there wasn't one here in real life. This was just sort of my prototype, proof of concept. But I will be doing this on my Oak Hill layout. So I hope you found this interesting. As always, post questions and comments down below, and I'll address some of the questions and comments from the last couple videos in the next video. So stay safe, everyone.